Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. By George, we're getting right at the top of the race, and right up front with it, we're just going to get right into this interview with one of the two candidates that's running for Fish's seat at Portland City Council. And I'm talking about an old-time friend of mine, Dan Ryan. I don't know why he wants to get into this ruckus, if you will, but by George, he's a lane man kind of a guy. I was sort of reminding him just briefly that the last time I saw him was downtown, just to show you how he is about his lane and about my lane. And then he indicated to me, well, Bruce, I saw you down at Norman's kitchen, but evidently I must have been sweeping that day because the wife's always beating up on me. but anyway, Dan, welcome aboard, buddy. Welcome.
Thank you, Bruce. It's good to see you.
I'm sure the city of Portland really appreciates the fact not only that you're running, but knowing how you operate, you will definitely win this seat. I'll just be straight up with you. You're a good man, Dan. And I will say to the viewing audience, look here, I've got four people that are going to be sitting here with us. It's sort of like just listen to what you have to say, and then we're just going to continue to get the gathering after you've left. So they're just going to listen to who you are and kind of get a better feel of who you are. But at the same time, I would share to both the viewing audience and the folks who are sitting there looking at you, check out the YouTube. Boy, I tell you, he's got quite a background in terms of all the interviews he's done on Zoom and the whole language, but especially YouTube. And you can get a little bit more of a deal. But what we're going to ask Dan to do today is for Dan to give us kind of a recap of those priority issues that he's going to be focusing on, that he feels would have quite an impact on his when he's in that seat, if you will, for city council. Because it's a tough arena that he's running in at this point in time. I think all of Portland recognizes we're all looking for results. We're all looking for leadership. And that's a very, very important piece for us. So Dan, with that, I'm just going to say, go ahead on and just go. As a start, you indicated there were three areas that you were very much interested in: Black Lives Matters, COVID-19, and the economy. You can take them in either way, but like I said, you've got about 15 minutes, and let's just go on and you talk. And if you slow down, I'll jump right in.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me, Bruce. It's good to see the rest of the crew here on the Zoom. I do have a family obligation I got to sprint to a little bit later, but I wanted to make sure I just said hello and spent some time with you. I think it's good for people to know, like, who is this person that's running for office? What's motivating me to do this? And my name is Dan Ryan. I'm, again, running for the city council seat. I am born and raised here in Portland. I'm the youngest of 8 children, 6 older brothers. Then there was a sister, number 7, and then 3 years later, I came out. And I went to Roosevelt High School, and after that, I went on to college and finished college. It's first in my family to finish college, which kind of is interesting when you're the youngest to be the first. And what I learned at a young age was how important it was to really lean into coaches and mentors and teachers, because our family had a lot of love and a lot of brilliance, but it also was challenged with issues like mental health and substance abuse. So I think that really shaped me as a person, and why when I went on to serve on the school board and was involved with being the CEO of All Hands Raised, I just know that a lot of children and youth, it's not their fault. They need some extra support. And I didn't feel like we had a system that really wrapped around our schools to help our kids. And I always talk about children and youth, Bruce, you know that, because I think that's always our long-term plan. That's always our long-term economic plan. And what I was proud of at All Hands Raised is we focused on racial equity back in 2010 when no one was really talking about it. And it's because we knew that the populations of the African American community, the Native American, the Latinx population, the Filipino population, we were failing them. And that's not good. And so we had to really get to the bottom of it. And it's the prototype of how I like to look at every issue. And that is, you figure out what the goals are. You can usually get people on the same page about the goal, even if they have really different styles of getting there. And then you need to know how to measure success. And then you figure out what those metrics are, and then you make them visible and accountable to the whole population, to the whole city. And I think one reason why I was motivated to run is because I feel as though in our city over the last 10 years especially, there's been a lack of that type of accountability. It's like we pass measures and you wonder, well, where did that transportation money go? Where did the housing money go? Where's the new housing? Where's the new sidewalks? Blah, blah, blah. And so I feel like we haven't done a good job of communicating to the voters on how we're actually taking those investments and doing something that's good for the residents. The City Hall is a $5.8 billion organization. As you know, Bruce, you've run for these offices, and it just hasn't been running well. So I like to always start off with the point is that we need systemic change. We really need a real mayor, a real legislative branch, and we need to focus on the top 3 to 4 issues at all time. Commissioner Ryan doesn't want to be sequestered into some tiny bureau getting lost in some weeds. I want to be focused on the issues that are front and center. And so let's talk about a few of those, right, Bruce? So one
Yes.
is definitely Black Lives Matter to me right now is police reform. And so it's like, what action can we take? We are hearing the protesters, thank goodness. This finally has registered with your average person, if you will. And it took centuries for that to occur. And now it's like, what does police reform look like? I do think Commissioner Hardesty's ballot measure coming up this November is very important to get behind, because it allows us to have the structural change that we need. So when I'm on city council, I know that we can have real community accountability as we build a community safety system. And yeah, the police are part of that. But then there's also community organizations that are trained in knowing how to be front and center and do de-escalation, they're trauma informed, and they know how to work with people on the streets. And it connects with other issues, which I could get into later. But I just want you to know I'm thrilled with the fact that was being put on the ballot this November. I'm thrilled with the fact that the People of Color Caucus in Salem, down in Salem, is working on other infrastructure issues. Because the truth is, we've had some of these policies in the city, but then when the police literally have gotten by with murder, like 3 years later, they'll have the attorneys help them get out. Next thing you know, the city's buying out that person. They get by with it. And the police officer that did the violent crime. And so we really need this systemic infrastructure change. And so I'm really thrilled that the youth of the African American community have been leading this movement. I've been energized by that when I've gone downtown. I think it's important to get out of the way and let the people, the future, speak for the movement. And it's been inspiring. My record on racial equity goes back for a while, both on the school board and at All Hands Raised. I'm proud of the fact that we saw graduation rates accelerate for African American students during my tenure. And I always say that racial equity shouldn't be a noun, shouldn't be another proclamation. It should always be a verb. It should be an operational plan. And so if you're not getting results and you're not measuring results, you're not doing anything for the community. And it always has to be community facing, always has to be student facing, resident facing, client facing, patient facing. I think sometimes in the city of Portland, we cared more about the power within our bureau than we do about what services we are providing to the residents out in the city. And we have to be facing that way. I come from the community sector. I'm a revenue guy. I brought in lots of millions of dollars to nonprofits so that we can do good work. And if you didn't get that creative money from the private sector, you often couldn't do any innovation. So I'm also going to be comfortable knowing that we have to get outside of City Hall and really look to community solutions and make them a part of everything we do. The other one I want to talk about real briefly is how it connects to homelessness and housing. That's personal for me. I lost my brother 6 years ago on the streets. He wasn't having a good life the last 15 years. His mental health issues took off. He stopped taking his meds, the good ones, stopped going to his doctor, and started self-medicating. It wasn't long before he found his life pretty tattered and he was on the streets. There were no real wraparound services, supportive services for someone like my brother Tim, which is why I'm fine with the Bybee Lakes Recovery Center that is repurposing an infrastructure that we all paid for. I don't call it a jail, I call it the Bybee Lakes Recovery Center. And so that's something that can be a part of that system. I don't think everyone, just because you have money, you can go to Betty Ford, right? But what about people that don't have money? They need to have treatment services as well. And so when I see a private partnership that we can work with, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna be supportive of that and lean into it. And I like the person they hired, Bruce. He's somebody that actually was on the streets himself and has recovered. And I always think people who have the lived experience and got to the other side are always the most impactful. In terms of COVID, Bruce, it's I'll just say this as a person that was told I'd be dead a couple times in my life because I got HIV in the early 80s. And then in 1995, I was told I needed to come home to make plans. That's what brought me back to Portland. I figured my sister would be the only one that could put up with me as a patient. So I came home for the last 6 months to a year of my life. And then the science caught up with me, and the medicine that I took, I started feeling better. So that same doctor said, you know what, you're doing fine. You need to go back to work. And so that's influenced me from that point on. I live on the edge. I think I live with a lot of purpose, and I definitely have a good BS meter. And I think that happens when you're told that you're not going to make it, and then you come back. So my point is, adults have to know how to do the behavior change to get through this. And I think Portland and Oregon in general has done a decent job, but man, I wish we were more disciplined like other countries. I remember watching CNN back in February, and they were showing how people in South Korea were responding to COVID. And it was so disciplined. It was so incredible how disciplined the population was. And I looked to my fiance and I said, oh, Americans won't know how to do that. And sure enough, we didn't. And it's been sad to watch. And we're knuckleheads when it comes to sometimes just knowing how to take basic science information. You have to break it down and do the right thing. So now we're in this world of hurt. And, the fact is, you see the economic indicators. They're worse than they were. I mean, they're 5 times worse than they were for the Great Recession of 2008. It's not even close. And it's more like the Great Recession. It's more like the pandemic, the smallpox pandemic meets the Depression. And, there's forecast that we had the worst economic forecast ever just this last week, the worst one ever in history. And so what I'm trying to say, and you know this too, is we're getting some economic hurt right now. And the city and the public funds always are trail and lag behind the private industry. My friends in the hospitality industry and the music industry, film, they haven't made a penny since mid-March. They're hurting. And so we're going to have we have to really focus our budget right now into an emergency situation. And I think the city and the county are finally going to have to do what we've needed to for some time, especially when it comes to housing and homelessness. And that is really look at how the two municipalities can work together, because we're going to have to figure out how to house people and feed people. And so it's a really good time for us to take a breath and figure out how to do those things. I think that's what budgets should be based on. What are the priorities? And then you backfill it from there. Not based on what a bureaucrat tells you their line item is. No, it should be based on what the people need, and then you build it from that perspective. And that's probably because I come from the nonprofit sector where you got to get results or no one will give you another dime. So I'd like to bring that type of accountability, that shared sacrifice, that shared possibility, that shared accountability, and that shared credit too, to the culture of City Hall. It's 25 years later. I feel great, and I'm just really feeling blessed that I'm in this position to be a part of the starting 5 that our city needs. And I do think we need a new starting 5 at City Council. And I think bringing in somebody that's not part of the status quo, that has this kind of life experience as an executive and as a community leader, is exactly the right fit at the right time. So I'm really grateful to have a shot at being one of your next City Council people.
Okay, real good. I was just thinking about your endorsement by Joanne Hardesty, again, too, another person who's very focused on the whole issue of police reform. And we definitely needed to have that discussion. And therefore, you're not necessarily having to spend all their time on that particular issue also, too. I think that was quite an endorsement. And Joanne sort of falls in that same line in terms of, i.e., she stays on her lane. You got me? I can still remember when I interviewed her when she was running and basically going through the so-called debate between her and Loretta, and she came on and boy, we had a good time. Trust me.
She comes from the community sector as well, so
yes.
We tend to be scrappier. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. So that's two. That's what I'm saying. So I'm really excited about the fact
and Commissioner-elect Rubio's from the community sector as well.
Too? Yes.
So you have this opportunity to really have a new mindset and a new culture reframe at the City Council.
Right. I think she's a first Hispanic, right? Of Hispanic Mexican, basically in that seat. So we
migrated up farm workers.
Right.
Yeah, and then they became a part of the great story that is Oregon. Yeah.
So we're definitely focusing. I don't know as well as I know you guys, but the bottom line is that I looked at her background. It seems as though she's pretty engaged too in her own self, because
Yeah.
we still have issues. We got the homeless issue aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's a very, very important piece. And were there any points, yes, that you can make in regards to the homeless issue aspect of it? You know, let me throw something out to you. Well, even when I was running for office, I felt that was a priority.
Yeah.
When the coronavirus came up, I thought it would be an opportune time, if you will, to test all the homeless right at the beginning, to get some sense of control.
Well, because of my brother, that was a motivation for me to run.
Yes.
And I think we've been two things. I think we don't categorize the types of people that need housing and shelter and homelessness
Right.
into these three different categories. We try to simplify it as it's one category. There are people like my brother Tim who need a lot of wraparound services. My brother wasn't houseable. He just wanted his next fix. So he really needed treatment. That's why I'm for the Bybee Lakes Treatment Center. Then there are those people that are essential workers, and they are definitely, we're now finding out they really are essential. They haven't been able to afford to live in this city for a long time. And so then the third one are those people that are on the verge of being homeless, and especially during COVID. And so this is really scary. And the last 10 years, I don't know if anyone's satisfied with our lack of results. It's only gotten worse. And I do think it's because the second part is the way we go about it. Like the people that are at the meetings are the elected officials, the people that staff them, and then the people that are receiving the contracts.
Right.
Where are the people that have recovered and are doing fine now? Where are the people that have a small business in an area where they've lost revenue because people don't feel comfortable or safe to come to their store or their restaurant anymore? And where are the arts leaders that have had their subscriptions go down for the same reason? This impacts our entire city. And we got to remember, downtown is a revenue stream. If we have a lively downtown and our currency's flowing, that means we have more money coming into all of our social services. And so we've got to remember that this affects everybody. And so we can't just have a kiss the ring meeting. We need to have a meeting where you got people that are actually affected by this, and there can be some tension in that meeting. Let's have it out in the meeting, not out in the parking lot. Let's keep it real in the meeting, and let's focus on real metrics. Let's look at what success looks like. And in 1 year's time, let's see how much progress we've made. That's what I had to do at my nonprofit. And I think the city needs that same type of accountability to the people that live in Portland. We're a lovely city. We got people that really, love this city. But I got to tell you, Bruce, especially the last 2 months, I've listened to people from every demographic category you can think of sound more upset, more angry, more frustrated than I've ever heard in my entire life. And I've been listening for a while. And it's fascinating that they all have that in common. And we have to bring that type of energy to the table, because that means they love the city, or they wouldn't be complaining with such passion. But we need to figure out how to start listening to one another, and how, instead of saying, well, you're right, you're wrong, the divisiveness that's in Washington, D.C., and even in Salem, that doesn't need to be in our city. We could figure this out. And it's time to get rid of the purity and focus on the purpose, and really start getting results for the people of Portland. And I think my background is as a conflict negotiator, and as a results continuous improvement type guy is exactly the skill sets that will be really helpful to change the culture and move forward for our city.
One of the other areas that I was very interested in terms of how you responded was, where does the money go? Where does the money go? Where does those federal dollars, those state dollars, and this, that, and the other, when they come to this city, all of a sudden people are constantly asking the question, where is the money going?
Yeah, I think that's back to, I'm really big on dashboards. So, for example, we had the transportation package pass recently, but there was one that passed, I think, 2 to 4 years ago as well. I still don't know what happened with that money. Like, I still have, you do too probably, I live in North Portland, and those same side roads that I go walking on, especially during COVID, I can't go to my gym, so I've been walking and running more. And boy, those same potholes, they look bigger than they did 3 years ago. And so, how can we have just basic information? Like, let's get a billboard and it says, okay, here's what the voters approved, and here's how we're going to measure success. And then in 3 years' time, let's figure out where we got with those funds. We have to communicate with the voters. We have generous voters in Portland, don't we? And they just say yes, 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 but they still would like to know what's going to happen with the funds. And I think we also saw that with the recent Metro bond for homelessness. I think clearly it passed by a big margin. Again, we have generous voters. But where was the strategic plan? What does success look like with that measure? I don't think we should be able to get by with going to the voters anymore without more clarity about how we measure success. And again, that comes from being a person that had to raise $2 million a year, 93% of it was privately funded. And if I didn't tell foundations or individuals or corporations how we were going to spend that money, and if I didn't have a crisp proposal on what success looked like, they wouldn't have funded us. So we can't continue to think that Portland voters are going to keep saying yes, especially now when we're going to experience economic devastation like we've never experienced in my lifetime.
You know, another real point, this will be the last point, was that your comments that you made in regards to the districtization of form of government for our city council, for the city of Portland, and also the whole idea of a city manager. You kind of talked a little bit about that in some of your interviews. Can you comment a little bit about that? Yeah.
Well, we're that one's, Portland likes to call itself certain things. I don't even like the term really, keep Portland weird. I think that's a little off-putting, but the fact is we got to stop being stupid. I mean, this form of government, there's not one city our size that's been using this for over a century. So we're not even caught up with the last century. And so it's time to just accept the fact that it's not working. And you got to have your team, your mayor and your city council focused on the top priorities. And so if you have a city manager that's overseeing the heads of the bureaus, they're doing that executive work for you, then we could stay focused on policy and what I like to say practice. Because you can pass a lot of policy, but wouldn't it be an interesting study to see how much policy is passed and then see if any of it's implemented, right?
Exactly.
And so elected officials need to be more accountable to see that the policies are actually implemented on the ground. Because I say practice eats policy for lunch for sure. It's that's where the proof is. And so back to results. You got to see how those policies are actually providing an improvement for life for Portlanders, or why pass it?
Okay, fine. But man, this has been great, and then I still would like to remind the folks with the viewing audience, and go to YouTube and check him out. All you have to do is just Google Dan Ryan for candidate for city council, and bottom line come up.
Bruce, you can go to danryan4portland.com.
.com?
It's a website, yeah. danryan4portland.com. And more importantly, I just hope everyone votes.
Yes.
A special election. Portlanders aren't used to voting in the middle of summer. And especially today. The Blazers just had their first game in a while, and we won. Did you know that? We won in overtime. We beat the Grizzlies. Yeah. We look good, too. Nerds look good. Yeah. But anyway, I'm not a Blazer fan, so I'm excited that we finally have sports back. I think I was going nuts because there was no sports for a while. So anyway, we have to have some joy in this city. My goodness, it's time to celebrate these things like the Blazers winning, and we got to come together. I can't wait to have a cleanup party downtown. We need to get the money flowing again and get some currency going in this city so we could come back. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, like I said, I guess the other point is that Black Lives Matter is right at your focal point, right at the top of the list with you, and we really appreciate that, because we need to do something about that in the city. Being identified as the whitest state in the union and the whitest city and whatever, and race and et cetera, we've got to resolve that issue, because as you say, we've got to communicate more. We've got to communicate.
We do. And Black Lives Matter, and we will have to, the proof will be on how we follow up with these policies. It's always when the camera stops running, what are you going to really do? And so I look forward to being held accountable when I'm in office to make sure that we follow through with action.
Okay, Dan Ryan for City Council of Portland.
Yeah.
Dan, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. I'm going to spend some time with the guys, and we're going to chat a little bit about you, okay? Have a good one.
Good to meet everybody over Zoom, and it's always really good to see you, Bruce, Deshaun, Jack. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Rip City.
Yeah, right on. Take care, buddy.
All right.
We're just going. We got a new guy on the spot here. We've got my dear buddy, brother Harvey, Deshaun Hardy there. There he is. You remember that guy? Yeah, I know you remember his dad. I know I remember when I was in the Marine Corps and I came to Portland, Oregon. That's the first place. That's the first place I ate. Check. Heck of a guy. Heck of a guy. But anyway, Deshaun, welcome aboard. By the way, Deshaun is a young man. Has been around in the community, whatever, and very, very involved. And like Dwight, you know, he's a community kind of a person, and we're trying to. And actually, Dwight's got his church. In fact, Dwight, he told me that he spoke at your church the other day, not too long ago, and I thought that was just fantastic that he did that. And we're going to go on and we're going to have these kinds of gatherings, if you will, make sure we get to the people, and especially our young folks. Our young folks are very, very important, and the idea of the Black Lives Matter situation has always been some issues, but this particular point of Black Lives Matter is a very, very important piece. And as you can see, Dan's background, he's got a resume that relates on the other side of the river, big time. He's had that experience, he's had that exposure, but because of his life, his personal life, he's basically has been in touch with the community. Now the key is that when we transition this time around, when he starts raising those kinds of dollars and talking about accountability and housing and this and that, and like his relationship with Joanne Hardesty aspect of it, he's going to really be on top of this issue. We're going to deal with deals like the whole issue of profiling and young Black men, if you will, those problems, and housing and food and education. And he was at one point in time he was president of the he was chairman of the school board. He was chairman of the school board, and there's always been a divisive thing on the school board. The school board always ran citywide, so therefore people in the community couldn't basically get a seat on the school board unless you knew somebody. And in most cases, when you did appoint, I'll be straight up with it. I spent a lot of time at the school board. When they did appoint Black to the school board, they had total control. They had total control of that person. That person couldn't do anything. So I think this time, with a guy like Dan, who's had that exposure to the school board, which is a very, very important piece to the Black community as far as education, because the city of Portland and the Portland Public School had the highest rate of failures, here in the state as it relates to the largest school district of African Americans. That was a pretty heavy piece. So I think that having someone on the school board, on the city council, that could talk to this issue here in Portland, I think that's going to be accessible. That's the key. A person that's accessible. We're definitely going to keep him on the show too, by the way. And I want to throw that out to some of the guys that are sitting there here now. And what we're going to do now, I guess we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back, and you guys are going to have to spend some time, and we're just going to have a good discussion. We'll chat a little bit about Dan Ryan, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about the protesting issue aspect of it and some of the other issues that are on your mind, so we can share that with the viewing audience to make sure that they get in and vote. It's very, very important. Okay, with that, we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, here at the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. I hope you joined us at the first part of the segment. That first segment, we were interviewing Dan Ryan, who was also running for the city council seat that Nick Fish just vacated. In all due respect, he passed away. And so that we got that vote coming in now. And the bottom line is that that's where we were. So we were talking to him, and he gave us sort of a little overview. He had some other commitments that he had to make. So he gave us a little front view, if you will, of who he is and what his emphasis were. And I had some other folks that were there. We were just listening. I had several folks that were there. They're on now. I had Deshaun. He's welcome. We want to welcome Deshaun aboard. That's Pastor Hardy's son. And Pastor Hardy was a master. You know, he was a giant here in the state of Oregon, for that matter. He was a giant, if you will, beautiful person. And his mom, and Deshaun's mom was an awesome person. Because I tell you, boy, she was a rock of Gibraltar. She was the backbone of the artist. Trust me.
Yes, my grandmother.
Yeah.
Yes,
She was a backbone. Trust me. And when she walked in the house, it was like when she walked in the meeting room. Everybody had to say, stand up and listen.
Yes.
I want to welcome you, Deshaun, and hopefully you continue that good work. And And we want you to be a part and parcel of the efforts that we're going to be making at this point in time, especially during the election. We like your views, if you will. We really would like your views. It's a very, very important point that the young folks, Black Lives Matter, if you will, the solutions are going to be resting on your shoulders, big time. I mean, singers like myself, that's a whole different ball game. I'll give you as much wisdom as I can, and then I got to give you the ball, bro. You can run.
Yeah.
You and Dwight.
Yes.
And
But
then the other man, and he's gonna be right there with you. He's gonna be he's gonna be that fullback on that other end. I know him. See what I'm saying? Then we got the 101st sitting up there, and Dak. I don't know if you know who Dak is. And 101st was an awesome piece. Got me? And so the bottom line is that we want to really welcome Dak, and Dak has been really an asset, and he's been instrumental in making sure that we're focused. And I think that's a good idea. So Dak, again, always welcome. Okay,
Thank you.
along the line, we appreciate that very much. So, folks, for those of you again who have just joined us, we just, like I said, we just interviewed Dan Ryan, and and we did a piece on Loretta Smith too long ago, and we did the best we could. Unfortunately, she didn't show up for her interview here on the Oregon Voters Digest, but we did the best we could. But again, Black Lives Matter again. We need the community needs to know this idea of divide is not going to make it. We have to work together. We do have to communicate. We have to be a part of it. I mean, you just can't ignore. We don't have time, if you will, to divide among ourselves. That definition has always been a part of who we've been years, and it just keeps on and on and on. Well, this time we want to make a commitment to Sean, and guess what? We're not going to do that this time around. We're going to make sure we bring these old cats to the table for you, John, so we can get something done. And
yes, sir.
Dwight
Yes,
is right
sir.
there. Dwight knows exactly where I'm coming from. Very, very important. He's from the Army, see? And Dad was part of the military too. Your dad was a part of the military. In fact, when he was laying on his bed, I was sitting there trying to get him his benefits, getting him more benefits. And that last run, and we chatted during that particular time, and we had some good talks. Unfortunately, he was on another lane. He maintained his lane until he died. He stayed in his lane. I've always stayed in my lane. But we always respected one another. I never bothered what his name was, and but he knew that every so often we get a, as one would say, we get a what was it, an off ramp. An off ramp. I might meet him. I have to miss him right away because I got to get back home. See, and whatever. So anyway, we want to make sure we acknowledge those kinds of things. So what we're going to do now is that, guys, that you've seen that piece on the first half aspect of it. I'd like to hear your comments. What did you think about some of the ideas that Dan Ryan came up with? Did it make some sense? What do you think? Let's start off with Jack. In fact, let's do with Jack. Jack was the one that basically put the hook out there and got him off the off lane. So Jack, share with them what were your thoughts?
Well, Dan, one thing that I like about Dan is the in-depth understanding of multiple issues. He does the analysis and he says the right words I want to hear. I want to measure performance to make sure we're spending our money in the most effective manner. He also raised the issue of the economy. The last quarter that we've just had, our gross domestic product in the United States dropped 33.9%. That is the worst drop in the history of our country, worse than even the previous economic downturn, previous to the recession way back of the Depression back in the 30s.
What does that mean, Jack? What does that mean?
What that means is we're going to see businesses go under. We are going to see banks be tight with money. We're going to see people out of work. And quite candidly, people of color, blacks, people who are underrepresented are going to feel the pain first, and they will feel it the hardest. Because when they talk about cutting overhead to keep a business going, that means laying off people. We're already seeing massive layoffs at Nike. We're going to see more layoffs at Intel. We're going to see, you find companies like Exxon is cutting 15%, probably more. Chevron's already cut 15% of their 40,000 workforce and are saying we're going to cut another 10%. So we're going to see an economic downturn of the likes that we've never seen before. And we've got a city that has not been spending its money efficiently and no real plan or no real budget management. But I believe Dan brings that insight and that perspective. More importantly, I think he brings a vision to where our city needs to go. And the late Commissioner Fish said, we haven't had anyone on city council in a long time that can bring a real vision. So for those reasons, that's why I support Dan.
Okay. Might add to that. Then I want to get Dwight to get his piece in before we get to Deshaun. Is that some of these items that we've been putting on the table and actually passing them through the city council and through the state for that matter was the whole issue with the sanctuary city concept. Sanctuary city concept was basically letting anybody come into the city and guess what? Replace folks who are already here trying to eat with short jobs, minimum wage and whatever, and letting them go and hiring them. Something's wrong with that picture. And I've seen it because I used to be, if you will, a contractor on highway construction, federal highway construction. And we had apprenticeship programs going through the unions. And then when we open up the state and we open up the city, i.e., guess what happened? Guess who would let that go first when we first opened up this whole business about sanctuary city? And I'm not trying to knock. I think everybody wants to eat. I mean, but the legal folks, don't get me wrong, they were legal. But I'm talking about Americans who happen to be back right here in this city, in this state, were laid off. They were laid off big time. And I know that. So I guess my point is that we need to sit down at the table and talk about it. I'm recognizing the fact that, sure, legals have problems and this have problems, but we have problems too. And we got Black Lives Matter sitting at the top of the room right now, and I want them folks to get a job. They got to eat. Okay? I'm just throwing that out just as a point in reference to what Jack is saying. I mean, we're going to have some tough times, and a lot of folks don't really believe it. They really don't, Jack. They haven't seen it yet until we start losing more jobs. And you might see more crime, or if not that, a man's going to eat. He's going to feed his family. You know what I'm saying? He's going to feed his family.
Bruce, I'll make one comment. We've seen statistics from the state saying unemployment has, it's gotten a little better. It's not quite as bad as it was. But if you really look into those numbers, what you're seeing is people have lost the permanent jobs with benefits, and now they're simply working temporary jobs on a much lower salary with no benefits, no health care, nothing. And so at the end of the day, are they working? Yes. Do they have a future that they can actually take care of themselves for the long term and provide a retirement and help the kids get into school? Not now. No.
Exactly. I want to make sure we make that point. And again, as you can see, I'm still wearing my cover here, my Marine Corps cap. We got Air Force, we got Navy, we got Army, the whole 9 yards. And right up front, we got some benefits that are there. Just go down to that VA. If you are a vet, if you got a DD 214, go down there to the VA and tell them you want to work. They have their own employment service in that deal. You just need to know where to go. And if you don't know where to go, you call me. I'll tell you, I'll take you over. Just let me know. 503-701-0457. Call me. And I'll tell you exactly what to do. If you've got a DD 214 and you spent some time and made it through boot camp and had a job, and if you got hurt that first year or first month, guess what? You'll get full benefits. Trust me. If you don't know how to do it, you call me. That's what it's all about. Okay, with that, Dwight, come on in. You out there? I know you out there. You did your services. Last time I spoke to you, someone that just passed away. You had a service for that particular person, and you're seeing the people just right there on the deal. What do you think, buddy? With reference to Dan Ryan, and do you think some of the points were made there that he's going to be able to respond to the community that you're seeing every day?
Yeah, well, the accountability piece was really important to me, to hear him saying that he thought there need to be some form of oversight, some form of somebody watching and making sure that this money is making it to the places that it haven't made it. For 20 years, I've been doing this activist work for over 20 years, and I've seen a lot of people funded. I've seen a lot of people put in position. But then at the end of the day, I still see the broken, hurt people. And I'm wondering, well, where did the money go? I mean, if you got all these organizations fighting for the good, how do we still end up as bad as we end up? And I think that is because there is no one following that money, tracking that money, doing the stats to see what's happening. And as Mr. Kerfoot was speaking, you know, I was there at a Heavenly Taste Cafe, a business owner. Now I'm on the unemployment line because and I even put up a GoFundMe to see if I could raise a few dollars a day. I got 100. I got 100. Somebody gave me $100, Bruce. But
Oh my God!
but they ain't really looking out like that. You got to most definitely know that that is an important piece that he brought up, is how we're going to come across a strong struggle as we regroup and reframe whatever it is that's left from it. And he's right; it's going to be a little while. It's not going to be a quick fix. And I'm just happy to hear someone talking about the educational piece, someone talking about all the things that are really, really defined to make sure that we're successful.
Okay. I might add too, as far as you, Dwight, is concerned, I'm gonna reach out to you too also, because in all due respect, as a veteran, you also have the opportunity to pick up some money. You know, so in all due respect, I need to chat with you about that, and we'll make sure we go through the VA and SBA. They got a special program for person like yourself. I know you've already been in business. You know what I mean? And you can open up a business tomorrow if you want. And I'm saying that program is there. So we want to work on that piece. And the other vets that you're identified with, we really want to go out and reach the vets. And again, I have a nonprofit aspect of it, and I definitely would like to extend the opportunity for you to be a member, and not only be a member, but also be one of the sponsors of No Vets Left Behind Oregon, NIE, and share those dollars with you, so that you can make sure that you keep the efforts you've been making, reaching out to vets and community people, making sure you got those food lines that you were having right there in the front of Miracles and whatever. Very, very important. Kind of sound like brother, my buddy. Here I am again, slowing down a little bit. I won't catch up. Brother Hardy was in the same boat. He was the kind of a guy that's what he was. He made sure the community got fed. Point blank. Right. He made sure that the community got fed. And I mean, it's so inspiring. It's so inspiring to be able to reach out. And Dwayne and I just kind of touch bases a bit. And next thing you know, here we are. We're sitting there talking. And pops up there telling me, say, Bruce, put him to work. Okay. So Dwayne, you tell him, put you to work. So come on board now. Share with us. What do you think about what you heard from Dan? And do you feel comfortable about some of the points you were made? Now you know who he is. And now you can correct him directly, because guess what? He's got your name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got a chance to meet Dan when he was running the nonprofit. I think he mentioned it. I forget the name. I went to a banquet they had in the Moda Center, actually, big banquet there, and got a chance to really talk with him and meet him then. So I didn't realize until we got on here, he was the same guy. So we had a good conversation. I think touching on some of the points that we're saying about just where is the money going and following that trail. We hear all these wonderful things. You know, it takes me back to when my father was alive, and we had church on 18th in Alberta, and he was trying to do what he did at the church he had now, and make a youth center and do all this stuff. And gentrification was happening, and he went to look at buildings, and he was talking about buying some buildings across the street from the church. And the realtor showed him the buildings, and when he was thinking about purchasing, he found out the buildings had been sold by the same realtor to the realtor's friend underneath them. And so we start talking about how at that point, remember, there was supposed to be $20 million allocated to Northeast Portland to better it. And where did it go? Right. And he says, well, we didn't ask for all these coffee shops. We didn't ask for, all these. How did it affect us as a community? It didn't. We weren't at the table. We didn't know where it was going. But those real estate guys and those builders all got in there and did what they were supposed to do. So I think in this point, we're going to have, with the pandemic going on, there's going to be so many people striving and hurt for money and hurt and needing programs. We really have to be due diligent about finding where the money goes. We can't be told, hey, it's going over here to help homeless, or it's going over here to help drug and alcohol. We have to tangibly see where the money is going and how it's being done, because I think it's difficult when you say you're going to do something. And so many times, I think in the past, things have been done to us, not for us.
Right.
They told us they're going to do things for us, but then it's really done to us, and it doesn't help us at all. So we want to make sure, I think, finding where the money is going, tracking that money, and making sure we know that, okay, you're saying it's going toward homeless and you're doing this and that. We got to physically see it. I got to be able to walk into a program or a building or send people as preachers and pastors to be able to send people and say, hey, you're homeless. I know a program, and I know it, and I stand behind the program because I saw it work before. I can send you there. Or you need food, you need this, and we're going to find out that that's going to be a key point. So it was good to hear him make those points about more where the money is. It's good to hear him make those points about Black Lives Matter, because that has to be. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to speak all across this state when it comes to the Black Lives Matter. I cracked a joke and say, well, God closed the church, and I thought I wasn't going to have to preach no more. And now he opened up the parks and the streets and the steps and said, hey, you're not done speaking. You got to go speak here. And I always say when I talk places, I said, Black Lives Matter is not just a statement. And I posted today on my social media, I said, this is more than just a movement. This has to be a lifestyle.
Yes.
This has to be a change where we're saying, hey, yes, Black Lives Matter. We're not saying we matter more. We're not saying we wouldn't matter the best. We just want to matter equally. And we want to get those equal chances for business owners like Pastor Dwight and other people to have the right allocation of money coming in and funneling in so that they can then strive and then pass it on. I know Pastor Dwight, he has no problem passing it on to the younger generation or giving them insight or telling them what to do. And so I think that's so important, of making sure that those points are really stressed and really made. And so it's going to be really interesting. And I'm looking forward to really reading into some more of his points and digging in. I love to read and educate myself on all those things. My father once told me, he said, son, be careful with politics. Just know how to move in there and you'll do just fine. So he said, always read up on people, always do this. And I know he's a great guy. I've met him, and I just want to definitely read up on his points. He had some wonderful points here and see. And I think, and knowing that, I think also, and I'll end with this, is that as people, when we do vote people in, it is our obligation then to hold them accountable for those points they made when they were trying to get us to vote them. So if they're coming in and saying, hey, while the voting campaign is going on, I'm dealing with this, and then they get voted in, it's our job to then say, hey, a year go by, we ain't saw nothing. What's going on? You said, and we got to hold these people accountable to make sure that the monies are going to where they're going to, and what those checks that they cashed are now, we're starting to see reaping from what they're saying they're doing. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I'm glad to hear a lot of the points. Education is huge. We need it. Right. And my wife's a vice principal, so I stand behind education and know that education has to be a huge piece, especially for our community, the Black community. We have to, you go to our schools and we don't have the same computers and the same classrooms and the same facilities as some of these schools that are in better communities. So we want to make sure that those pieces are better, because this is not about us on this Zoom call. This is about the next generation coming and making sure it's better for them. And so I think we're all working towards that. So I'm excited to see and learn what he'll be doing.
Good. The organization was All Hands Raised, right?
Yes.
All Hands Raised.
All Hands Raised. Yeah, that's they had a wonderful banquet at Moda Center, and I got to attend and donate some money and really get to see the grassroots work of the kids and what he was doing. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, hopefully. Now, what are you doing now? What about yourself as far as putting those pieces together? Because I tell you, Pastor Hardy told me, saying that, Bruce, make sure you get that church now. You should be ready to move. So what can we do to help you out on that line?
Well, it's wonderful. I always say, that we stand on those shoulders of those people before us, right? And because I'm able, and I consider, everybody knows my father was my superhero. He was a giant to me. He was a giant to a lot of other people. But I look at it and say, I was able to stand on those shoulders. They say if the man stands on the shoulder of a giant, he can see a lot further than the giant can, because you're standing on his shoulders. And it takes me back to a conversation I had with my father where we were in his office, me and him, and he said, hey, you're going to be a great leader one day. Great leader. You're going to be better than me. And I said, oh, no, don't say that, Dad. Don't. And he walked off. He got his overcoat, put on his hat. He walked to his car, and before he drove off, he rolled his window down and said, son, I said, Dad, those are big shoes to fill. He said, son, your feet will grow. And what it was he understood understood what a lot of people don't do, is that as an older person, that let me start passing the mantle and the resources now while I'm alive. So he would take me to the mayor's office and let me sit in meetings with the mayor and the governor and commissioners and introduce me. And at the time, I didn't understand it. But I knew, now I understand he was making sure that door was still open for me to walk through and others to walk through. And now it's my obligation to not only walk through those doors, but then pull some of these other young brothers and sisters and walk them through. So it's just, now it's just been, like I said, the church, I was speaking when he passed, speaking and traveling, and got a chance to speak at Pastor Dwight's anniversary, which was wonderful, and other churches across the country. And then when this happened, I kind of thought I had a break. I thought, okay, church is closed. I don't have to preach. I don't have to do anything. But then here comes the whole Black Lives Matter and racism movement. And it really, what sparked me to start speaking more was my own daughter. I live in the city of Happy Valley. And my own daughter decided to put some friends together to do a protest. And as a father, I just said, hey, what can I do to back it up to make sure it's done right? How can I use my platform, but yet still keep her voice? So let me call the mayor of Happy Valley. Let me talk to the police chief. Let them know it's not just no hooligans running down the street. And we're thinking 500, 600 people may show up. We had close to 5,000 people in Happy Valley show up. They shut down Sunnyside. We marched to the city hall. We spoke. And that led to this, somebody saying, hey, I need you to do a TED talk. And hey, the Indian American community out in Hillsborough was like, hey, we're from India. We have people from India. Can we talk more? We need to do stuff about Black Lives Matter. Can you come speak? That led to downtown speaking more. That led to me going to Estacada, where I was speaking and walking and marching in, and they're holding rifles and guns as we're speaking and spitting and doing stuff like that I heard my ancestors and my grandmother talk about. And so those are the times I realized that, this is serious. And this is something that I remember my father fighting for Kendra James when she passed, and him marching and doing all that stuff. And he was doing it, like he told me, for his kids and for the future then, not knowing that 17 years ago, now it's 17 years, here I am fighting for some of the same equalities that we need, and we're still looking for those equalities. So at this point, I'm still preaching, any moment I get, I'm still preaching, but I'm also focusing on making sure that our community and our youth and everybody else we get the equality that we're owed. We're no less than, we never will be less than, and I won't accept us being less than. I was raised to be in love with my heritage and in love with my skin, and know that I was a powerful young brother and can do things. And so I tell people when I go into meetings, I'm me. Every time I go in, I'm Deshaun Hardy. I'm unapologetically a Black man, Deshaun Hardy. I'm not going to change if it's a room full of whoever. I'm going to be me. And that's what we have to bring to the table, and know that, hey, I believe the climate now, you can feel it. It's a different climate. You can feel that there's a push going on, and we need to consistently stay on that push. And brothers like Dwight and all you guys yourself and so many other people out there doing so many wonderful things. I think we have to continue that work because it's needed.
Well, like I said to you before, and Dwight knows that that's basically what I'm doing, just reaching out and that baton. And that's a very important piece. And he's there for you too. Like he reached out to you to be a part of what his piece was aspect of it. And Jack is basically the same way, So basically we got a little enclave right here, just as we are. We're diverse too at the same time, because we all have issues. You got my point? Yes. But at the end of the day, the definition of this issue is America, and it's going to be all inclusive. We paid hard to get this piece, especially those of us who spent some time in the military, that type of deal. You know what I mean? And I dare. That's why I wear my cover, just to make sure people understand. Don't come up here talking to me about no minority issue. I know the difference between minority and majority anyway.
Right.
There's a difference between $1 and $5. One has a majority, the other one has a minority.
There it is.
Jack, did you get that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Bruce, as from the military, the only thing you focus on is the brothers in your platoon or your company, and you don't see race. The only thing you say is, can your fellow brothers protect one another? That was the important thing. So, yeah, I mean, I had in my platoon in Vietnam people from the inner city of New York and to the country of Arkansas, the rural areas of Arkansas, and we had Black, Hispanic, white, Native, myself, and all sorts of people from America. But the only thing, when I took over the platoon, I asked them what they thought about, what they were thinking about it, and when they were out in the field, and they went on for an hour and a half telling me how they hated the Army and hated Vietnam and hated olive drab underwear. And they finally said, well, what do you think about? And I said, how I'm going to get you and me back home alive in one piece. And if you think that's the right thing, then I think we all ought to be thinking about the same thing. And so right now, I think what we all ought to think about is how we eliminated systemic racism and bring people to the table, work together to help everyone to have prosperity and a future, a bright future together, irrespective of race, creed, or color.
Right.
Hey, well, good. Well,
Hey
you know,
there, Brucey.
go on.
I'd like to say something that I heard in there from Dan about the mental health piece.
Yes.
That was so important because, you know, as African Americans, we don't really talk about Uncle Billy and them that's in the basement.
That's right.
You know,
We just say he's crazy.
we
Oh, he's crazy.
just say crazy. We kind of just leave him
Like
money.
Bull. Remember Bull?
Remember Bull Ramsey? Yeah,
Yes.
bust the
I
headlights.
knew Bill. I knew Bull.
Yeah, but you know, it was beautiful to hear him say that he has the experience of understanding that struggle. Because
Yes.
now we're just trying to really accept that struggle in our community, because we're really now seeing the recourse of what the drugs and the mental health and what has happened, and how even when we were known just for that little uncle in the basement, now we're known for talking to the cars, talking to the trees, you know, talking to the people that's not even there anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we really didn't have a bunch of that because we really didn't deal with the issue, but we know the experience of it. So when we run into somebody like that, we're more compassionate because, you know,
Yes.
but
Yes.
at the same time, I'm just glad that he has the experience, and if he's going to be in a position that
Yes.
he would know what that meant by him talking about his brother and that issue.
Exactly.
And it's serious. It's a
Yes,
serious
it is.
issue.
Yeah.
I'm glad
It's very,
you bring
it's
that
very,
up. A lot of people are not talking about the mental health.
Right.
and
Exactly.
it's so serious because as Black people, we get so, you hear psychiatrists, something, oh no, I don't want to talk to that. I don't want to do that. Right. But it's needed because if you look at the statistics, mental health is running rampant in the Black
Yes.
community.
That's right.
And so we
Right
have a lot of people, and I said, it's sad that we just pass it on as like you said, oh, Uncle crazy, man. He just been, no, Uncle needs some help.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
We got to find
Exactly.
Uncle where to get the right help. And so I think
Right.
that's an important piece for us as African Americans, that mental health piece.
Exactly. And you figure,
Unfortunately, the issues have been there for a long time. I remember when we came back from Vietnam, PTSD, we didn't even know what the word was. But
Yeah.
there are people that just couldn't change or adapt to that change back from the war back to society. And they
Right.
went off. Some off went, I mean, that was probably the start of the homeless crisis
exactly.
in the 60s, the late 60s. And they just couldn't adapt. They couldn't adjust. It was mental health, whether you call it PTSD or a mental breakdown. It was mental health was the issue. And there was no help to get these people through that problem. So that's why you see so many of the people on the streets, even today, have served in the military. So, yeah, I'm glad to see Dan talk about that. And Bybee's Lakes, I've been very impressed with what I've seen with Bybee Lakes. They've been operating for over a decade along the west coast of Oregon. They have good statistics. They analyze each person, try and develop a plan for that individual, whether it's drugs, whether it's mental illness, whether it's just an economic downturn. Maybe they've been away from the job market too long, to help them get them back on the feet, not just to give them a fish, but to teach them how to fish.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, I really appreciate you just made that point, Jack, and hopefully we got enough time for me to share this with you. But I was right on top of that Wapato Dale piece, day one, when I ran for the commissioner's seat aspect of it. The fact of the matter is, that's been around there for quite some time, and they sold that building for $5 million. It was worth $100 million. $100 million. I was there through the whole process. I brought it back on the table when I was running for office, and in all due respect, they had another contractor. Her name was Kay Turan. I don't know if you remember her. She was Volunteers of America. She was the first person that was going to basically manage that whole facility. Okay, Black woman. And all of a sudden, up jumped the problem. They didn't want her there. Okay, and she had administrative skills, the whole 9 yards. Again, I'm putting that little piece in there for Black Lives Matter. See, that's the kind of stuff we have to stop. This has been great. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate very much your time, and we'll see you next week. Okay, folks.